It is high time for the J70 cult to finally be disbanded and pass the torch on over to the Vigan. The J70 is actually pretty well founded as being the best plane in the game, the best top tier in the game, whereas before I'd always looked at it as, while it did have magnificent flight performance, I'd always found the gun pretty difficult to aim, given that it's a side-mounted NR30mm, I think they're called. Same guns found on the MiG-19, and while they are pretty damn good guns, for top tier it is a little bit slow firing, and obviously not a lot of ammo there with 60 rounds. And on top of that, the PL5B was very broken for a long time. As you guys know, the PL5 has had a very big problem where the thrust is just way too much for the missile's own good. It would pretty much not pull at all. You'd be firing an unguided rocket essentially, and unless you were shooting it from 4 to 5 kilometers away, you probably weren't going to be hitting a target that maneuvered at all. Because of this, I was kind of stuck in some awkward place where I couldn't really rely on the guns for close range, but obviously the missiles were not suited for close range in the slightest, and all I was really left with was a plane that had magnificent flight performance but no real meta or extremely capable offensive weapons. And because of this, I have kind of kept the J70 out of sight and out of mind. But the PL5 has been buffed, and man, I gotta say, this is the most effective missile at top tier right now. And that may come as a shock to a lot of people, and I'm going to explain why throughout the rest of this video. As always, for aircraft overviews, I have timestamps on the video in the description down below. You can go ahead and skip around to parts that look interesting to you, but as always, I open up with kind of an overall generalization and discussion on the J70, so we're going to go ahead and talk about that here, and in which case carry on with what makes the PL5 so effective. Well, actually, before we do that, why wouldn't the PL5 be considered one of the most effective, if not the most effective missile at top tier? Well, starting off, some people would like to have SAR missiles, semi-active radar homing Fox 1, as it's called. And while I understand where the logic is coming from here, the SARs used to be the strongest missiles in the game. That period of War Thunder is long gone, in my opinion. SARs are borderline useless to anybody that has the slightest clue on how to play top tier, similar to how IR missiles were kind of, and still are, borderline useless to anybody that actually sees them coming. With the use of a single flare, you can pretty much defeat any IR missile in the game, which makes SAR missiles seem a whole lot more viable because they can't simply be flared. Except for the fact that chaffing them is easier than ever, pre-chaffing them is easier than ever, missiles in general are weaker than ever, and radars are also weaker than ever. Combine all of this and you pretty much get left with a top tier to where if you're getting missile kills, it's either A, because the target is incredibly bad at the game, which, it does happen, but that's not going to be something that I'm going to base the top weapons in the game off of, or B, the target that you're shooting at simply doesn't know that you're shooting at it. And that is impossible to do with a Fox 1 missile, given that it has RWR warning. If you fire a radar missile at a target, it's going to know you're shooting at it, and it's going to be incredibly easy for them to take defensive measures, and will pretty much always defeat that SAR missile incoming. Unless, of course, they're bad, or additionally, they are just so swamped with other targets shooting at them they can't possibly defend all of these incoming missiles at once. All Aspect is cool and all, but let's be honest, if you're taking advantage of what All Aspect has to offer, and say you're gonna shoot head on or something, the odds of the target you're shooting at not seeing a missile flying at them head on is pretty slim. And while it does happen, you're going to get your All Aspect kills once in a while, I wouldn't necessarily consider that as a huge benefit to a missile for it to have IR All Aspect capabilities, because one flare in All Aspect is all it takes. You don't even have to cut Afterburner. The way you're going to get missile kills at top tier, even if somebody's paying attention, is right here. I see a F5E on my 6, I look back at him, I look forward to check my surroundings, and in that slight time frame of me looking back and looking forward, he was able to sneak a missile up my ass. And if somebody's paying attention to you, that is the only way you're going to kill them with a missile at top tier. Other than that, you have to be shooting at targets that just don't see a missile coming, and they're not going to know to defend. In that particular clip, I had known he was there. I was entirely ready to defend an incoming missile, but all it took was about 1.5 seconds of me not looking, and I ended up dying because of that. that's pretty much summarizing the entire missile meta we have in top tier right now. Again, yes, you're going to get kills with all of these other cool missiles. You know, your SARs, you're still going to get kills with once in a while. Your all aspects, you're still going to get kills with once in a while. But my point being is that against the good players that actually know what they're doing, they know how to use their C key and look around, you're not going to be killing them with missiles that they A, either don't see, or B, aren't slipped up their ass in between their glances forward and backward. All that being said, the PL5 has everything a missile at top tier needs to exceed the criteria of getting kills in either of those two manners. It's recently been buffed to 30 Gs instead of its old 20 Gs, which helps it significantly in maneuvering, especially so after the motor's burnt out, because while the thrust has been reduced, which makes it a lot more viable in closer ranges, it is still the fastest accelerating missile, or IR missile, at top tier. Except maybe the R24T, but that's a special breed and we're probably just not going to talk about that. Because the PL5 accelerates so quickly, it is still not the best close range missile. It'll definitely work, it's a lot more viable up close than it used to be, but what that wonderful acceleration does with the short burn time, it allows for shots like this. Very long range launch here on this Vigan for a short range IR missile standard. He's going to begin to turn around, and because that motor's burnt out, the missile marker is burnt out. He doesn't know it's coming, but the PL5 accelerates so much before that motor finally burns out, it has more than enough energy to follow him into that little climb he begins to do, and it hits him anyways. Had he turned around in time, it just wouldn't have mattered. The burn time is too short on this missile, the missile marker goes away, and his best chance of knowing that that was coming was going to be to either be looking behind him that entire time, in which case how is he going to be fighting anyone, or B, he's going to look back at just in time to see that smoke trail and then has to just assume, okay, maybe this missile's going for me, but maybe it's not. In any case, he doesn't look back in time for either because the PL5 leaves a very, very small window of time in which you can know it's coming, and he ends up just dying. For those of you who've used the R13M1 before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The R13 has some pretty damn good range, it's got a very short burn-in motor, and it's actually pretty flare resistant too, all things considered with how the flares work in current War Thunder. But either way, you can get some pretty long range kills with the R13 despite having a really short burn time, just because it accelerates very, very quickly, it's pretty aerodynamic, and therefore you can get up to 4-kilometer shots depending on your altitude with the R13. The PL5B is the R13 on steroids. It's got the 30G, it has absolutely no maximum G limit overload on launch, and it's got an extremely wide field of view for you to lead that missile with. So even though it kind of struggles in the acceleration department with close range launches, you can lead the missile so damn much and not have to worry about how many Gs you're pulling when you launch the missile, that close range shots aren't as hard as it may seem, especially given that the PL5 has that extra 30G now, and it of course doesn't accelerate quite as fast, so it does actually pull a little bit while the motor's still burning. As you're watching these clips, I cannot drive home the point enough throughout the rest of this video. That's pretty much the entire theme. The PL5 has the highest probability to kill at top tier, in my opinion, just because it's got insane range for a short range missile. You can get, 4 to 5 kilometer missile shots pretty damn easily and often with the PL5, so the range is extreme for a short range missile. There is no G overload on launch, so you can be pulling as hard as you'd like when you launch the missile, which really helps you add lead and save the missile some energy, and as a result give it some extra distance and or increase the close range capability of it. And of course it has 10 more Gs than it had before, so it is a 30G missile, and I can actually feel the 30G, especially after that motor's burnt out. But the number one thing about the PL5 that makes it so damn good is that motor. The fact that it burns out so quickly yet accelerates so fast and gives it so much range, it makes it extremely deadly because targets really don't know it's coming, and how could they? It leaves very, very little room to actually be able to see it and react. Especially considering that if you're playing, you're probably going to be trying to actually do some kind of offensive attack. You can't always be looking around at all times, and again, the PL5 just leaves a very small window to defend. 10 minutes in and we are still talking about the PL5s, but I think for good reason. Ever since that buff, I'd say the PL5s are the best top tier missiles in the game. I wish I could have as many of them as I can on all planes, because in my experience ever since this buff, this is the highest probability of kill missile you're going to be playing at top tier. Let's go ahead now and talk about some actual gameplay for the rest of this video, because that's probably what you want to hear and probably what you clicked on the video for. The J7 has no change in the flight performance. It's as good as it's ever been. Extremely great flight performance. I don't know if you've noticed in some of these clips, I've been at Mach 1.4, 7,000 meters on a normal sized map. Said to be impossible. I get that a lot, especially in the comments of my latest video. People saying you can't get to high altitude and high speed on the normal sized maps. I'd say you're just completely wrong, and I prove it in a lot of clips in this video, but I'm ranting, and that's a topic for part 2, which is going to come out later. I believe it's got the MiG-21 SMT engine on essentially the weight of a MiG-21F airframe. So I think I got that right. If I'm not, sorry, you can correct me in the comments below. Either way, this plane has some pretty damn good thrust to weight, and it feels similar to a MiG-21 BIS in acceleration and climb rate. Although I think the MiG-21 BIS does have it beat out, the energy retention that this wing design allows for definitely makes up for that difference. You're going to be keeping your speed a lot more than you are in a normal MiG-21, and actually it's got some of the best energy retention at top tier. I think it's only beaten out by something like the F5 or the MLD, and only on certain speeds. Because of the magnificent energy retention, you saw me kind of just playing around with two guys up in space at the beginning of this match who were really hell-bent on killing me. I don't know why, maybe it was because I was way up at altitude, but in top tier, a high target is not inherently more dangerous than any other target on the battlefield. So I don't know why they were spending so much time on me. Eventually I just said the hell with it and went down and actually tried to have an impact on the game, whereas they just kind of kept chasing me around for a little while. This is what I was talking about earlier in the video with Fox 1s just not being viable anymore, and because they're not. You're going to see the amount of AIM 7Fs I'm getting shot at me right now from these role-playing F4Js up here in outer space pretending to be the ISS. They are getting absolutely nothing out of their aircraft extra by being up here versus low altitude. I know a lot of people are going to find that controversial and they're going to want to correct me in the comments below, but you're forgetting that this is War Thunder and this doesn't work like it does in DCS. There has now been 5 or 6 Sparrows launched at me at this point, and absolutely none of them have come anywhere close to hitting me. And, well, that's just going to happen every single time to somebody that actually knows what they're doing in top tier and knows how to defend properly. They're pretty much just wasting time and energy on me and rallying themselves up into a nice death circle that my teammates are going to be able to exploit and start picking them off from. It doesn't matter how much range your AIM 7F has at top tier, it really doesn't. You could launch it from 20 kilometers away and the J7 is still going to be able to close the distance and not die to it, and once that distance is inevitably closed, there is going to be absolutely nothing you can do about it. The J7's just got you on the ropes at that point and you're just waiting to die. So the fact that they even want to hang around me for this long is kind of baffling to me, but maybe they just wanted to give me free kills, I'm not sure. If I was them, I'd be staying as far the hell away from me as possible, or better yet, just wait until I'm maybe not paying attention and try to sneak a missile up on me. But at this point, they're just unloading their entire arsenal at my plane, wasting all of their missiles. They've already known that I've been defending them this entire time, so I'm clearly paying attention. Not sure why they continue to shoot at me, but it is what it is, and it's helped my team in the long run. Even if I haven't really gotten any kills out of it that much, it's been a benefit to everybody, so I'm not going to complain. As I said in the beginning of the video, even though the J7's got some great flight performance, you're going to get plenty of gunshots. Because of that, I am just not too hot with these guns, or the gun rather. And it's simply just because of where it's mounted. If you've played the F104 before, or the T2, or something with like a side-mounted Vulcan, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. When the gun's on the side and kind of underneath the plane, it's a little bit difficult to aim. On a Vulcan, it's not quite as bad because you get Vulcan velocity. Unfortunately, though, this isn't a Vulcan, and it makes aiming it even more difficult. Something like a MiG-15, it's not as bad because all your targets are moving significantly slower. You have a lot more time to make adjustments. At top tier, everything's going supersonic at all times, and you really don't have a lot of time to line something up. Basically what I'm saying is you're going to be watching me whiff and completely miss a lot of shots that I really shouldn't be missing, and I'm not ashamed to admit that because I'm not a perfect player. My aim's not even usually that good in general, and it's especially not going to be good on a side-mounted gun like the J7. If you remember the top 5 video I had done on basically just my top 5 top tier list, and I put the F5 at number 1, and I put it at number 1 for the exact reason you're seeing me fly the J7E. It's just that mentality that you can kind of just shepherd the entire enemy team around with your cracked flight performance, and basically you're untouchable. That's exactly what you're seeing in these clips with the J7. The performance is just so damn hot. I can do whatever the hell I want to this enemy team. I can herd them exactly where my team needs them to come and clean them up, and maybe I'm not getting the most kills, but I'm definitely going to be making a huge impact for the team. While the J7E does this, and it always has done this, it just hasn't been able to capitalize quite as hard because I found that the offensive capability was a little bit lackluster compared to the F5, solely because the F5 had those 220s. They're pretty good guns, lots of ammo, and you're able to make them very useful. Now, the J7 with these cracked PL5s does everything that the F5 does in practice in a real top tier air game, and better. It can get a lot more kills, and it can get a lot more kills quicker and do the exact same thing. You just saw right there an over 4-kilometer launch on that F4J, and it would have hit the target, and I would have gotten a kill there had someone not snuck it in before me. I'm up here at altitude as I usually like to be in the J7, just to give myself a little bit of, space to do an orbital strike with the PL5. The extra speed and the thinner air helps my missile be a little bit better at shooting people 5 kilometers away down there at the ground, but that also means that I'm going to be the primary target for Sparrows. But you know what, that is absolutely okay, because every single Sparrow that's going to be launched at me, I'm going to get an RWR warning for. I know just exactly how I can defeat them, and that's what I'm going to do. All of these F4s flying around up here are just wasting time and energy and missiles trying to kill me. They don't know that, of course, because they probably don't know the capabilities of the J7E, and it's not every day that you run into a top tier player that isn't completely 5 IQ, but unfortunately, I have at least 10 IQ, and I'm in a J7, so there's really not much they're going to be doing to me. And while he is kind of chaffing or flaring, I'm going to look for a missile shot. He does turn hot, though. The last second, I'm not able to get one. Had I even got a lock there, I probably wouldn't have taken it, just because he obviously sees me. He's going to know my missile's coming, and he's going to flare it away very easily. You see me using C, I'm looking around just for any missiles. Whenever I turn like I am leaving an RWR blind spot, so whenever I do that, you might see me just pop a countermeasure here and there, essentially pre-chaffing just in case I'm being locked and I don't realize it. But other than that, I'm looking around for IR missiles mainly. And you see me even get slow kind of at some points. I'm going less than supersonic speeds, all the way down to 0.6, 0.7 Mach at times, but it's completely okay. I'm in a J7, I've got some pretty good acceleration, I've got pretty good energy retention, and I have countermeasures, and a lot of countermeasures. And that's something I hadn't really touched on about this plane. It has a lot of countermeasures, and they drop one at a time, so you can be pretty efficient with them, I guess is the word. And that means that you do have a lot of get out of jail free moments, even if you do find yourself on lower speeds. That's just the state of missiles in War Thunder, and well, I'm going to use that to my advantage. We have 3 targets right now and 1 teammate, so it's essentially 2 versus 3, 2 F4Js, an F5, and I have an FG Phantom. Unfortunately, the FG does a full commit head-on, but he does at least manage to take the target out with him, so I am now in a 1 versus 2 with an F4J and an F5E. I'm not too concerned about it, but having an F5E on your 6 is extremely annoying. The reason I'm not too concerned about it is because there's a controller in front of his name, and I know that's kind of consolist or whatever, but the fact of the matter is my confidence does go up a little bit every time I see somebody with a controller in front of their name. However, my confidence is immediately shot down the moment a third player comes into this fight, and it is an F4E, who is a lot more deadly to me than the F4J, and it's going to make it even more difficult to deal with the F5. In my mind, I want to take out the most maneuverable plane first, which is the F5, so that way I can pretty much just chase the F4J or any of the other Phantoms the entire time and not have to worry about anything. Whereas if I'm going after the bigger, slower plane first, like the F4J, the F5 might be sitting on my 6 the entire time, and it's going to make it pretty difficult for me to balance my offensive-defensive attacks. That is, of course, how I'd want it to play out. Unfortunately, I think it's going to play out in the exact opposite of how I want it to, and I do actually end up having to fight the Phantoms first. The F4 is slinging some missiles at me. I think it's a mix of Sparrows and IRs. Definitely not threatened in any way, but I do want to deal with these guys. I kind of flew toward my airfield a little bit because I know there's a teammate over there, and I want to at least make it a little bit less distance for him to travel to actually come and help me. So I kind of flew toward my airfield, but I'm of course not going to abuse it. And I don't know how I missed these shots right here. I don't know if I completely whiffed or the Phantom flew in between the timing of my gun. I don't know if that's possible, but I genuinely don't know how that missed. It looks like he flew right through it, but again, I don't even know if that's possible, so if I missed, I'll own up to it, and I'm just bad. But continuing to be bad, I finally managed to get a good crit into his wing there, and I know that's going to make him pretty much out of this fight. There's no way he's going to be able to keep up with my J7. He already can't keep up with my J7 even in a perfect plane, and he's certainly not going to do it without his right aileron. The F5, though, has been on my tail as I was shooting that guy. Thankfully, he's not the most experienced player, which is completely fine. I'm not dogging on the guy or anything, but it does allow me to get that shot into the F4 without dying, and therefore I'm able to focus on him in a 1 versus 1, and we do manage to blow his tail off in a nice short burst, which, as you've seen in this video, hasn't happened too often for me. But I'm glad that it happened there, especially because he's an F5, which, if there is a plane that's going to out-dogfight the J7, it's going to be either the F5, the MLD, but other than that, that's pretty much it, and that's on a good day. The MLD does have advantages. It can exploit over the J7, and it really could go either way for those planes. But as far as the F5 goes, the J7 kind of just does everything the F5 does, but better, except energy retention. In a 1 versus 1 dogfight at top tier, that's not quite so important, so I'd say that the J7 has the edge in the dogfight against an F5, but again, it will come down entirely to pilot skill. Just gonna nice and easily finish off this F4. There was also an F4J that you saw earlier. Unfortunately, he had to return to base for some reason, and he ends up crashing, so we do manage to win the game because of that. Not the funnest way, but it is a win nonetheless. Hope you guys enjoyed the J7E. This is, in my opinion, the best top tier right now, sporting the best missiles at top tier, and I will probably have to readjust a list later on. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one.